Hello everyone. I want to talk to you about fake New Year's that just went by and about calendars and time and how people have been using calendars, what they are, that whole thing, right, about time, counting time, and how fake calendars govern our lives when they shouldn't. You should govern your life. It's your life, your life. Not anyone else's. No one has a claim on your time or anything else that is yours, right? So, yeah. I have been taking notes. Can you hear them? The calendar thing is a huge theme. And the more I tried to be concise, the more it spread out. It was like a Hydra situation. You know the Hydra story, right? I don't have to tell you that Hercules went to kill a Hydra creature, and every head he cut off, then 3 new heads spawned. You know that, right? If you don't, please just go to some mythology place and read up on Hercules and the Hydra, and you will know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I figured out recently how to do timestamping in YouTube. And so I just want to tell you more or less what I will try to do here. And then I will try to put some sensible timestamps in the description. So whoever is listening can just jump ahead or give up if nothing interests you. Anyway, I will be talking first about all the explanations that we are given, we people, human beings, right? When I say we, it's just human beings, humanity, right? Not we, this group or that group. So, okay. I will talk about all the explanations we are given about calendars and why they exist and why they are the bee's knees and everyone should abide by the calendar. Anyway, I will try to show you how insane and ridiculous all these explanations are. Obviously, I won't go through all of them, but I have to confess there are a lot of tabs open on my internet browser. A lot. I can't even make sense of them all, but I will try to go through them in a somewhat orderly fashion and point out some very blatant errors about the explanations we are given on this calendar business, so that whoever is listening can hopefully arrive at the conclusion that none of the explanations we are given really make much sense. They are always lacking in some important part, or they make claims that would have to be verified somehow and can't, you know? So we will go through that, right? All these explanations that go on. And then I will talk about real clocks. That would be the sun and the moon and stars and the seasons and how they are connected to one another and how they work. This would be then real clocks. Okay? And then I will try to bring it all together in a way that you, the listener, can make useful sense of all this information. How you can use this information to have a better relationship to your environment and to the idea of time. Okay, so this is my plan, or rather my wish for this recording. It probably will be a bit long. That's another reason for the timestamps I will try to put down there for you to click on. Anyway, I hope it comes out as good as I want it, or at least close to what I want. So, you got it right. Act 1, fake crap. Act 2, real things. Act 3, conclusion and how this information may be useful to you personally. Fine. Let's dive into the first part, which would be the explanations. So, before I do that, I want to again put out my disclaimer. I will be using information that is put out by other people, not me. Information that is on the internet, in history books. This doesn't mean that I believe in or support any of these so-called facts. I firmly stand on I don't know anything except what is personally verifiable by me, but this is the information we are given. This is what's there. Everyone else talks about this information as if it were the whole truth, nothing but the truth, right? So I will be using what we've got. But I want to make it very clear that I only go by what I can personally verify. So in the end of this recording, when I will be talking about how this information can be used, I will be basing it on my own experience, on things I really actually do in my personal life, so that if you want to try them, then you have some base from where you can start. Someone else, a person, me, a human being, exactly like you, is doing things with this information. So if you find it interesting, you may try to adapt or try it for yourself, whatever you think is useful to you, or do something else, which it's also very nice. If you're a different person and you have different needs, then you can take this information maybe and come up with something even better than I did for myself, right? But this is the thing. We live in a place that we don't really understand, and then we go by explanations that are given to us from various sources, all of them stemming from the same creature, same type of creature that is talking to you. It was all put together by other human beings. And the way to go about any information that is given to you is think of someone you really find very, very stupid in your life. I'm sure you have someone in your life that you just think is a moron, is a ridiculous person. So think about that person, okay? Let's say Jeff. Sorry, smart Jeffs, not you. But think about someone that is called Jeff and that is very stupid. It's like a moron. And this guy gets into his head, he will talk about, I don't know, space and planets. And he writes a thesis and he just lays it out and bases the thesis on a lot of information that is already out there. And he gets a PhD. And now he's an expert. And now he talks incessantly about what he thinks is right. But you know him. You know Jeff. You know Jeff is an idiot. So you don't take anything he says seriously, PhD or no PhD, because you know him. You know he's a moron. So this is how you have to go about all the information that is presented to you. If you don't know the person, then just don't swallow it. Listen to it. If it makes sense to you, then fine. If not, I don't care if the guy is the king of, I don't know, whatever land. It has no bearing. PhDs, I don't know what else, what other degrees or fanciful names, it doesn't matter because you don't know them. So it could be Jeff, right? The guy could be the king of whatever land, Jeff the king of whatever land, and with 3 PhDs and still be talking nonsense. So yeah, this is just my disclaimer that I don't necessarily believe things are like they are presented to us, but I will be using the information that is out there. Okay, so now we can start. Now that I've rambled on for, let me see here, 10 minutes or so, we can start. The real thing can start. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is talk about all the fake crap, right? Wherever you go look up the history of calendars, you'll read a lot of things that seem to be plausible, and then you will come to the central bit that is the Roman idea of calendars. And so I will first read to you the meaning of the word calendar. It is said that the Romans, the ancient Romans, with only these words, we are already in unverifiable territory. Since there are no time machines, we can't go back and see if these famous Romans even existed, and if they did, that they were doing these things. So this is speculation from the start, right? But it is said to us that calendar comes from calare, which means to announce solemnly, to call out the beginning of the month, which is said to have been done by priests. They observed the skies and then they proclaimed for all other people, the peasants, the little people, us, right, that the new month had begun. This was then a service these priests provided. Why? Because at that point, taxes were collected by the Roman officials. Calendar also comes from list, register, and from account book, from the Latin calendarium, which is account book, and from calende, the calends, the first day of the Roman month, when debts fell due and accounts were reckoned. So the priest would come out in Roman times and call out the new month, and at that time the debts had to be paid, accounts had to be reckoned, people had to pay their dues, right? So from the beginning, this instrument, the calendar, was an instrument of the state. And the idea, I think, behind telling everyone that calendars are very nice and important and we have to count time, otherwise we would be lost, with little squares and numbers on them, and that the name comes from this very important fact that the Romans invented this calendar we are using. This one, right? The calendar we are using, the Gregorian calendar, is a calendar that comes from the Roman times. This is the idea. So the idea, I think, behind all this story is to instill in people the following thought. If tax paying is going on since the invention of time, since the beginning of time, then I guess it's fine and it's right. So, of course, you have some authority telling you what time it is and what day it is, and of course, you will have to have a state and pay taxes. This is just natural. It follows from there. Because the beginning of time, since the beginning of time, people have been doing this. So, okay, then you just do it too. So you have that pamphlet that is given out by the state and by the Roman Catholic Church, and you just base your life on it. Why not? So this is the first penny I want to drop in your wishing well inside your head, so that you can realize that by adhering to a calendar that is given to you by an authority, you're effectively handing your life over. Because your life is made out of time. And so if these people control your time, they are in control of your life. I want you to take a moment to think about it and then unattach yourself from the idea that the calendar, whatever calendar you're following, I don't care. I'm talking about the Gregorian calendar, and I will talk some more about it because it is the official secular calendar that supposedly everyone in the world should follow. But the idea of a calendar that you haven't put together should by now be in the forefront of your awareness, so that you can unattach yourself of the idea that this pamphlet with little squares and numbers on them and special dates and whatever is something real. It isn't. It is a prop that is being provided to you by people who are invested in harvesting your time for themselves. Even the phrase time is money is only true for these people. For them, time is effectively money because they put out these ideas, they distribute these props, and they make everyone follow their timeline and jump when they say jump and do things when they say they have to happen. And so they are effectively in control of people's lives and time, and they can harvest that time in the form of money and taxes. Right? This is what is being done to you. If you follow blindly the idea that the calendar is a real thing, which it isn't, is an idea that has been crammed into your head so that you obey. You are obeying a calendar. You're obeying numbers on a little piece of paper. Anyway, so I hope I pried you out of this ridiculous idea that the calendar is something real. It isn't. Okay, so now I will go through not everything. I will just read some excerpts of a website about the history of calendars, and then I have some pages in Wikipedia also. I want to just show you some bits on these pages of this history of calendars and timetables and whatever that will show you how defective this idea really is, why it's defective, and how you can spot the trick that is being played. Okay? Even the trick that has been played on you 3 days ago. Today is the 3rd of January, and when I'm doing this recording, and a trick has been played on you that the year has started 3 days ago, which it didn't. It didn't. At the time of this recording, the real year will not start for another, let me see, for another 8 days, right? Then the real year will start. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So the first thing now I already said is the idea that the Romans created this calendar that is now being used by the whole secular world. And I gave you the etymology, more or less. And now I will talk about the explanations around calendars. So I'm on a website called calendar.com, very creative. And right at the beginning, there is a list of topics. And I will just read the list so that you can understand how it is set up in a way that you just agree. Everything is kind of plausible. And then you come out of this website, right, of this page, thinking calendars are the most natural thing in the world, like dogs and cats and octopuses. Okay, so the table of contents of this website reads like this. Calendars in ancient times is predicated on these ancient times existing and being as they say they were. History of the Babylonian calendar, history of the Egyptian calendar, the Roman calendar. So these are all these history bits that are being corroborated as if they were a given. You were there, right? You went to Babylon, you know everything that went on there. You went to Egypt, you visited the pyramids, you built them. You were there when they were building it. And then you also were in ancient Rome, so you can verify that. See how it goes. It already is putting up a ton of variables that no one can verify. Don't come at me with digs and archaeology and all that crap. It doesn't work like that. You can't just defer to another authority. You have to go from what you can personally verify, and you can't. Okay, so they then come to the Roman calendar, and then it gets more detailed. The first part is to get you to Rome. And then they have the history of the Julian calendar, which is then bringing in the religion. And then the Gregorian calendar, which brings religion still a little more to the practical side. And then they talk about local calendars that are still in use. And they make kind of fun of it. Oh, people use these nonsense calendars instead of using the real one. See how it's set up? And then they have a place for modern calendars. So if you're not really satisfied with the history bit and the religion bit, and you are now convinced that having a personal take on calendars is bonkers, then they have the modern calendars and the digital calendars, which are the right things because you are a modern human being, you like digital things, otherwise you wouldn't be on the internet at calendar.com, and so now you feel redeemed. Yeah, you will use the digital calendars, which is also just a way of controlling your time. Give them all up. You don't need them. Okay, so this only by the table of contents, you can see how you're being led into a conclusion that calendars are the bee's knees and you can't do without them. The interesting thing is that obviously any explanation has to start with the real thing, the sun. The sun goes around and makes seasons happen. And because human beings need to know when they are about to freeze to death so they can prepare, obviously they would, any human being would at some point figure out they have to understand what the sun is doing. If they don't understand what the sun is doing, they will just die and it will be over for them. So obviously every calendar, every idea of a calendar has to come back to the sun, the workings of the sun. So obviously they start from there and then they go into all the ideas of ancient times. British archaeologists announced the discovery of what they claim as the world's oldest calendar. immediately they say, okay, the sun, right? We need the sun makes seasons and we have to understand the sun. And immediately after, they go into authority figures, British archaeologists. And then they talk about some ancient prehistoric calendar, which I also, I find it fascinating. I will go into that. So some prehistoric calendar that is in Scotland, in a place called Warrenfield, which they strangely call monument. So is it a calendar from ancient times or is it a monument? These things are different things. Something very old that someone dug up to control time isn't a monument. It's an utilitarian build, like a bridge. A bridge isn't a monument, it's a bridge. It's something you use from here to there. So immediately, when they say this has been dug up by prehistoric people, and then they go to monument, you can notice that there is something wrong. Because a monument is like a statue or something. You put up because of cultural reasons. It isn't utilitarian. So either it's a utilitarian thing, a calendar, a way to control time, or it is a monument. It can't be both. Then they go about the Babylonian calendar and the Egyptian calendar, and they make a lot of plausible observations like, yeah, the Egyptians had to know about the Nile, the river, what it was doing, and so they created a calendar around the river, which might be true. If these people even existed, as they say they existed, then okay, it would be plausible, it would be probable that if you depend on the sun and you depend on the river, then you would try to make sense of it and build some sort of timetable to know where you're at. This would be plausible. It's just you can't be sure of any of that. You weren't there. Okay, so they go on, and then they come to the Roman calendar. And then I want to read this part because it's so telling. So when they come to the Roman calendar, then they say this: by the time of the establishment of the Roman Empire, we had several millennia of experimentation completed with various calendrical systems and with multiple different ways of marking time. We still weren't getting it right, that the amount of time the Earth took to revolve around the sun couldn't be counted in whole days. When a civilization couldn't count an entire day, it meant that calendars in different places and times around the world would regularly fall out of sync with the seasons. If a calendar is out of sync with the seasons, it's out of sync with the stars and the movement of the moon. Only hearing these words make me cringe. Because, again, we are now getting into corroboration of the whole space thing, the Earth revolving around the sun, and then why that means that civilizations couldn't count an entire day, which doesn't make any sense. And the fact that there wasn't a whole day to be counted, however, that might happen. It can't even happen, and they're talking nonsense. And then, okay, so because we couldn't count this split up part of time that I don't know how they came about, ancient civilization that couldn't do these calculations that they are telling were the problem, then the calendar fell out of place with the seasons, and then they couldn't count time anymore because the seasons were wrong on the calendar. Now, just let me put something here. If you have an explanation you're trying to come up with, like a calendar, which is to count days, come on, you don't count part of days. 1 year and, I don't know, 3/4 of a day. You don't do that. You count days, right? If you're a human being, you count days from here to there. If you're coming up with some kind of method to count these days and you realize it doesn't work, you don't go about blaming nature. You just realize you're being stupid and counting days wrong. You're doing something wrong. But this is the basis of all this calendar mess. That the Earth revolves around the sun, and the time it takes the Earth to revolve around the sun is a number that can't be explained by any means. And so they have to put up this very complicated calendar. And then they have to put extra days in it to leap over the leap years. So this is how this whole mess is being explained to you. That the reason your time doesn't make any sense is because nature does something really weird, right? The Earth revolves around the sun, and the time it takes for the Earth to do that is unmeasurable by us humans. It has a very complicated, uneven number in hours or days or whatever, and so we have to come up with ways of fixing that by adapting calendars. It's such an amount of stupidity that my head hurts. And it hurts more because I know people believe this kind of stupid idiocy. Nature isn't wrong. Nature is doing nothing wrong. People with their stupid calendars that are created to make other people crazy and control their lives are not intelligent enough to come up with a system that actually represents what nature is doing, and that is all that's going on. Okay, so now they have this idea of the calendar, and Julius Caesar, this mythical creature, reformed the calendar so that taxes could be paid more easily, and they had then supposedly the Julian calendar for a long time. I imagine if you were a peasant then, or a citizen or whatever, and you didn't obey, that they would then make you obey this ridiculous counting system. And then, when this didn't work, big surprise, then some other guy, actually a whole mess of other guys, came up with different ways of counting days, which then also failed because nature apparently doesn't want to cooperate with tax collecting. Bad nature. And even religious ideas that need specific dates to fall where they say they are, like Easter or some other religions that have days, special days, they also have a big problem with nature because nature doesn't care about any of that. Nature does what it does and doesn't care if people have some ridiculous concept in their heads that they then obey and want to dance around on some days and pray on another days and make holidays or whatever happen. Nature has no time for that crap. It does what it has to do, and then people go crazy trying to figure out what day they can buy Christmas presents or pray or be sad because some mythical figure died on a cross. It's all ridiculous nonsense, and nature doesn't care. It just goes on doing what it does, and then people go crazy to build calendars around it to make other people obey. This is all there is. Okay, so the link to this website is in the description if you want to get bored by a lot of untrue information. You can go there. I will now proceed to some other observations about this idea of calendars. First, I will tell you about something very strange that is going on in Brazil, where I live, for some time now. We used to have every month, we have 12 months, right, in our calendar. It's always 12. This will be relevant later. We have 12 months, And it used to be like this. January was the beginning of the year, and we would just go about celebrating that and have holidays. And then in February, there would be Carnival. And then in March or April, we would have Easter. And then in May, we would have Mother's Day. And in June, we would have the June Festival, which in Brazil is the Harvest Festival. It's winter. So at the end of autumn, then the big harvests of corn and pumpkins and whatever happens. Like in the US, you have Halloween, where you carve out pumpkins. This is the Harvest Festival. It's the end of autumn, and you have the Harvest Festival. You have to harvest everything before winter. So there is plenty of food, and then you do festivals to eat all that food and to celebrate that you can fucking lie down for 3 months because you don't have to be on the field working all day long. So this would be then June, and so on and so on. Every month had something nice going on, some real world celebration, right? Mothers and then fathers and then harvest, something like that. In recent years, though, what happened is that for some reason, every month is now a disease. It is to build consciousness about a horrible disease, and everywhere you look, there are government-sponsored ads about horrible diseases, one for every month. And I will read them to you so you can see how horrible that is. What are these governments doing to people's brains and to people's lives by constantly reminding them of horrible, horrible things that can happen to them? You know what they are doing. You know what this is for. You know even who is paying for this crap. It is the whole medical, pharmaceutical industry that wants to harvest money through the planting of fears inside people's brains. This is what they are doing. This is why you have to uncouple yourself from everything that has to do with controlling systems, systems of authority that have no claim over your life or your brain. You have to see these things clearly so you can stop being just cattle or a field where they can plant things inside yourself and then harvest your fears in the form of money. Don't let them do this to yourself. Don't let anyone scare you into giving money away for nothing. There is nothing there. Don't let people take advantage of you like that. Be aware of what's going on. Okay, so now I will read the campaigns, conscientization campaigns for the months, the 12 months of the calendar, government, church-sponsored pamphlet, and now industry coming on the back of it and making people crazy. So now we have celebrations every month like this. White January, for the promotion of mental health. They obviously tell you every psychosis and problems people have, and then you go all nuts. So it's a nice way to start the year, right? They talk about mental health and they just ruin your mental health in one big swoop with White January. Then Purple February. This stands for fibromyalgia, endometriosis, and Alzheimer's. Also nice. Also nice. All things that you can't control and that might happen to you, and then you're screwed. Okay. Then Navy Blue March. And this is horrible. I'm sorry, I will have even to read this. This month is for prevention of colorectal cancer. They are selling colonoscopies by making people aware. For a whole month, that they can have cancer in their intestines. It's horrible thing. It's a why would anyone go along with this? Anyway, okay, so now they come to green, blue, April. They can't even decide on the color. That is for safety in the work environment and autism conscientization. So now they are like telling you you can be killed in your job by doing your job, and also that there are children that are born autistic. And so you have to mind them. And you have to worry that your child might be one. Okay, so then Yellow May. Yellow May is the one that isn't about diseases. It's about to make you conscious of traffic accidents. So now they're telling you you can die in a horrible car crash. And this is obviously, it's so obvious. It's for selling insurance. If you don't have health insurance, then if you are in a car crash, how will you survive? Come on, people, this is all sponsored by the health industry. Anyway, okay, then Red June is about donating blood. So now they're after your blood and your money. And then Yellow July is hepatitis. Then Golden August is about breastfeeding. This is also something ridiculous, because they talk about breastfeeding a lot, and then they sell those substitutes. There are ads everywhere in August with those substitutes for breast milk. So they say it's about breast milk, and come on, no one has to go around telling women that their babies want to suckle on their breasts. It's ridiculous. Every woman knows already. The baby knows. The newborn baby knows what it has to do. No one has to tell you to do any of these things. The baby comes out. It knows what it wants. The woman knows what she has to do. It's so obvious. If you have a breast that is filled with milk and is hurting because you can't get that milk out except by letting your baby suckle on them, you know what you have to do. No one has to tell you anything about that. But they will tell you, and then they will say, yeah, but some women don't have that, and then they have to use our product. Blah, blah, blah. Buy our product. It's ridiculous. Okay, and then Yellow September, prevention of suicide. It's fitting, right? Because they start with White January about mental health, then they make you crazy, and then in September they say, no, please don't kill yourself. I know life is horrible. I know you have all these diseases and problems, but please don't kill yourself. There are 3 months left and we need your money. So please just hang in there. Okay, call this number if you're feeling suicidal, and just carry on so that we can get to the end of the year and harvest some more of your fears in the form of money. So then they come to Pink October, and they talk about breast cancer. It's such a lame setup. Come on, breastfeeding, then suicide prevention, and then breast cancer. Leave our breasts alone. Stop talking about breasts all the time. I won't even talk about this breast cancer thing, because they're just scaring people into getting mammograms, which are detrimental to your health. Okay, whatever. Do whatever you want, but be at least aware that this is what is being done to you. Do how many mammograms you want if you feel safer, but think about it. If no one had said to you that you had to do them, otherwise you would die of horrible breast cancer, then you wouldn't just go around doing them for no reason. You would wait for some symptom or something to go on in your body that you can't understand and that is malfunctioning to go to doctors. You wouldn't do preventative anything if your brain weren't being filled constantly with fears that you might die. Whatever. This is so horrible. I don't want to even talk about it. So November then is prostate cancer. Same thing, same thing. And Orange December is now skin cancer. It used to be HIV awareness. But I think HIV is now being, quote unquote, taken care of by a lot of governments with free medication. And so there is no money there anymore. And then they just switched to skin cancer because you can make people completely crazy and sell them sunblock and screening, regular screening. And you can make them so scared that they then have perfectly harmless little spots on their skin taken off. And there's a lot of money in there, right? Maiming people left and right. Okay, so now I hope this is clear to everyone who is listening that this calendar business is about making people crazy, instilling ideas in there, and make them jump when the calendar says jump. Okay? Anyway, I have some other tabs here opened on Wikipedia, but I think I have talked enough about how fake all this is. I will put links in the description so you can see for yourself how ridiculous everything is. I will go through these tabs because there are some little tidbits that are still interesting, but I will go faster because I think I made my point. I think I made my point. That is all fake and for control, and you have a lot of unverifiable things that make you jump to conclusions just so that you can accept this prop that is given to you by people who want to create fears in you and who want to control your time and want to harvest taxes and money by selling you things you don't need. This is pretty clear. I think it's pretty clear. So on another tab, I have here another history of calendars by Wikipedia. And one of the things I love the most about this historical information is when they talk about prehistory. Prehistory is such a good word. They say they will tell you history, and then they go to prehistory. If it's prehistory, it's not history at all. It's prehistory. No one wrote anything down. No one knows anything. They are just making it up as they go. So I see a mountain, and on this mountain there were some creatures called dinosaurs, and they had wings, and they made wishes come true if you prayed to them at Easter, which fell on the third moon of the, I don't know what year, when the mythical dinosaur died on a cross. Really, people, this is all nonsense. Stop believing this shit. Also, ancient history is very interesting if you start to understand how to read it. For instance, the Greeks, as early as the time of Homer, appear to have been familiar with the division of the year into 12 lunar months, but no intercalary month is then mentioned. This phrase is telling you it's bullshit. The Greeks, mythical people, right? Not the Greeks that you can meet now and say hello, no. The Greeks that you can't meet, as early as the time of Homer, which, again, another name that is supposed to be something, it's nothing, appear to have been familiar with the division of the year into 12 lunar months. Appear to have been familiar. Appear. Can you hear these phrases? I wish people would read these phrases and just listen to them, because appear to be familiar is nothing, means nothing. Appears to whom? Who is looking at these ancient people and then coming to these silly conclusions? Anyway, everything you read that comes from these official sources reads like lunacy if you really pay attention. Okay, so now I will go to another place, and this is a place I want to make everyone aware of. It's a website I have been traipsing about called stolenhistory.net. If you are at all interested in seeing how history can be completely made up, just go there. The link is in the description. You will be shocked at how much information is completely made up, purely speculative, and sold to you as truth. Mind you, the people who are there are people who are trying to come up with some kind of explanation, some kind of alternative explanation to the mess we're in this place. People lying to us left and right, trying to plant fears in us and then harvest money, the whole money thing, everything. It's an insane place to inhabit. You have to admit that, right? So these people at stolenhistory.net, they are trying to come up with some kind of explanation that is less ridiculous than all the nonsense that we are presented. They are not experts. They are just people. Some of them have PhDs even, but they are not using the PhDs as clubs to beat people to death with their ideas. They are just presenting them there and hoping that another person can contribute so that they can come to some sort of solid ground. You will see if you go there that there is no solid ground when it comes to history. There isn't. No one knows anything. Okay, so I have been going there, and there was a very interesting comment about a supposed artifact, ancient artifact. Everything is very ancient, so you can't go there. It's a nice way of presenting information that no one can verify. You say it's prehistorical or ancient, and then no one can dispute that because it's ancient, right? It is there in the past where no one can access it. And then you just put up a lot of variables wherever you like them, and then you reap the conclusions from those variables you just planted in some unverifiable past time, and then you're home free with whatever ridiculous thing you want to come up with. Anyway, on stolenhistory.net there was a comment about an artifact for counting time, allegedly from the Middle Ages. And so I clicked on the link that was presented, and I went to this place, the history blog. It's a nice blog, but the person who is doing this blog believes in everything. And so it's just a collection of historical nonsense, but it's nice. It's a nice collection of historical nonsense. You can have a good time there. All these links I will put in the description. So this article was about something called a copper horary quadrant, which is a timepiece, calendar, and altitude calculator. It looks like a clock, but it is based on the sun. And the idea behind it is that in medieval England, supposedly, the day was divided into 12-hour-long segments between sunrise and sunset. And since the days throughout the year differ in length, that then the hours would shrink. So if you have 8 hours of daylight, as it happens during winter, then if you divide that by 12, every hour would just be smaller. It would contain 40 minutes instead of 60 minutes. And then on summer, when the days are longer, then your hour would be, 70 minutes. This was the idea behind it. And this is at least somewhat plausible if you think about time as a function of the natural world. I still don't believe that medieval England people were using any of that. If medieval England is something real and those people that were living there were doing exactly what everyone says they were doing, and that this artifact then was something common, which I don't think it was. If everything they tell us about medieval England is to be true, then artifacts made of metal would be so expensive, no peasant could even have one. This would be like saying that every one of us could have a Corvette or something. It's an expensive thing, or a helicopter. Sure, there are helicopters, but you don't have one in your garage, right? It's too damn expensive. So people would not have these things to count time. They would just look at the sun, which is the right thing to do, if you ask me. Just look at the sun, you know what time it is. You know what time it is. No one has to tell you what time it is. You always know what time it is. And if you stop using clocks all the time, then you will get better and better at guessing what time it is. You just will look out the window and you will relate to the light, the sunlight, and you will know more or less what time it is. And then you can go look at the clock and you will see you're right more often than not. You have to be in seriously strange weather conditions for you not to know what time it is. You always know what time it is. Okay. Anyway, I went to this article on the history blog, and at least you have there some information that is true, which is days in different seasons differ in length. And this is the key information about all this calendar business. Nature isn't static. You can't try to cram nature's workings into something that is not flexible. So all these people that are trying to control other people's lives, printing out these pamphlets with numbers on them and special dates and months you have then to be all bonkers because of diseases, they are trying to impose their ideas on the natural, real world that is not interested in them. It won't obey them. It will do whatever. It is not your problem or nature's problem that there are people with something that is called libido dominandi in Latin. I am being very pedantic today, right? But you have to know, this is a thing. There are people with libido dominandi, which means they like to dominate others. I'm sure you can find, even in your own extended family, that there are people who really do enjoy bossing others around. This is called libido dominandi. They want other people to obey them because reasons. And these are the people then that gather together and come up with religions and governments and calendars and ways to ruin other people's lives. Anarchists are not your problem. Anarchists are like nature. They go about their lives. They don't care what you do. As long as you don't bother them, leave them alone. They will leave you alone. And this is how nature operates. It goes about its thing. So the sun has something to do, it does. The moon has something it has to do, it does. Ants have something they need to do, they just go and do whatever they need. And bees and flowers, they don't really pay attention to you or to anything. They just go about their lives. And so this is a big problem for people with libido dominandi, that they can't just tell the sun to do what they want the sun to do, so they can't collect their taxes or sell mammograms. Okay, now let's talk about real time, real clocks. Obviously, the first real clock is the sun. The sun makes seasons happen, and human beings need to know when they have to plant and when they have to harvest and when they have to start building some kind of shelter so that they don't freeze to death. Now, I will go to a place that I highly recommend you get very acquainted with. It's a place called timeanddate.com. It's a wonderful place for you to start your journey of decoupling yourself from insane calendar thinking and get to observe your natural world that is happening around you and how real clocks work. The sun, the moon, stars, seasons, everything you need to know to lead a healthy life grounded where you are. This is important because different places in this realm people call Earth have different time zones and different seasons even. Okay? When it's winter in the northern hemisphere, which I don't like this concept, but it is the one that is given to us. I don't like it because it implies a whole mess of things. But I will be using it because this is how people are accustomed to think. In the northern hemisphere, when it's summer, then on the southern hemisphere, it is winter. You would think that a sane world would account for that difference. That Christmas would fall in December on the northern hemisphere and in June on the southern hemisphere. But you can't have that if you have a central government structure that wants all the world to do the same thing so that they can sell the same crap and harvest taxes at the same time. Oh yeah, all you people that are very concerned about one world government, just relax. You're in it. You're in it for a long time now. Stop worrying that some crazy dude will come and dominate the whole world. It already happened. You're living it. Relax. Relax. Okay, so now the first thing is to go to the place in time and date to see daylight. If you go there, all this is in the description. You can follow along and just click and go there if you want, or you can just ignore me and think I'm crazy. I'm fine. If you do go there, then you will have the chance to observe. Now, I will talk about everything in time and date as if I were living in London, which I'm not. I'm living in Brazil, completely different place, but I will talk as if I were living in London because of Greenwich. Greenwich is where time starts. Isn't that interesting? So think about it. The King of England rules the whole world through time. I won't go on about this. This is a conversation for another time. Conversation for another time. I just noticed what I did there. Okay. But I want you to just let this penny fall in your mental wishing well. And think about it. Greenwich, the place where time starts, mark zero, is in London, England, and this is the place where time, the counting of time, of fake time, starts. Your year starts when England says, when the King of England declares it is the beginning of the year. The festivals fall where the King of England declares they will fall. The names of the months that are being blamed on Romans that allegedly invaded England, and that is why England has no say in the naming of the months. It's just, yeah, what can they do, right? They were invaded and now they have to live with it forever. So your months are named because England was allegedly invaded by Romans. And so the whole world has to abide by those names. Anyway, I will stop my London Greenwich ranting and go to the fun part. So if you go to timeanddate.com, on the link I have provided, you can see on this page for daylight, where they are showing daylight, they will show when the sun rises and when it sets, and how long the day is, how long the sun shines, so you have light. This is the day, right? A day is not a 24-hour blah, blah, blah. Day is the time where humans, without modern technology, would do things. Then it would go dark and they would go to sleep, like any animal does, because they can see, right? Okay, nocturnal animals can see, and then it's inversed. Come on. I'm trying to do something here. I know there always will be that person that will say, yeah, but some animals, they sleep during the day and then they do things at night. Right, right. Then you have the moon rise and the moon set, and it works the same, okay? Work with me, work with me. Okay, if you go there, then you will see that now, when I'm doing this recording, the 3rd of January, in London, winter is going on. And so the solstice is over. We just went through it at Christmas, made up date, made up holiday. Solstice is real. Solstice is real. It happens on a specific day where in the northern hemisphere, it's the winter solstice, the shortest day and the longest night. And at the same time, in the southern hemisphere, you have the summer solstice with the longest day and the shortest night, because they are inversed. So in London right now, we're past the solstice. So now, as the sun progresses its journey through the ecliptical, days will get longer and longer due to it moving to spring. And this is exactly what you can observe at this website called Time and Date on the daylight page that I have put in the description. You will see that the sun will come out every day a little earlier, and it will set every day a little later. And so you will have something like this happening. On the 4th of January, the day is 7 hours, 59 minutes and 13 seconds long. On the next day, it's 8 hours long and 40 seconds. On the next day, after this one, it's 8 hours, 2 minutes and 13 seconds long. And on the next day, it's 8 hours, 3 minutes and 52 seconds long. And so on and so on and so on. Until the 31st of January, where the day is already 9 hours, 6 minutes and 3 seconds long. This means that the sun is now moving into spring. The seasons will now move into spring. You are leaving winter and going into spring. Now, this is good information. Why? Because you can personally verify that. You can go to time and date and you can see when they say the sun will come out and when it will set. And you can have your little digital clock there, or your cell phone, which is aligned with Greenwich and all this crap. And you can then see for yourself if your days are getting longer. And if you do this exercise, you will confirm this information, that your days are effectively getting longer. And so this is good. This is good, solid information that you can base your life on. Not made up silly things in boxes with numbers on church pamphlets that serve authority. This is just observing nature, taking notes, and grounding yourself on something real that is happening in 3D life to you by nature. Okay, the next page on time and date that I will ask you to click if you are interested at all in this information is the moon page, where they tell you when the new moon is due, then the first quarter, full moon, and third quarter. And they will tell you the duration of the lunar cycle. This is another important information for you to ground yourself. And it will explain why no calendar will ever be good enough unless everyone stops with this 12-month crap and fixed month length and starts to go back to nature, observe nature and obey nature, because you can't not obey nature. You will always obey nature. You can have fake month and fake year and fake days and go bananas and feel out of sync for your whole life, or you can give that up, which is fake anyway and is doing no one any good except for people who are harvesting money, and you can adopt the real clocks, sun, moon, stars, etc., that will then give you good time information for you to live your life. Now, on this page, where the moon cycles are laid out, you will have this information for this year that I'm doing this recording. The world celebrated fake New Year 3 days ago. The fake New Year came after fake Christmas holiday, which took place at winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. And it also took place in summer solstice in the southern hemisphere, which doesn't make any sense, but this is how the world does things. Okay, so you have winter solstice. Winter solstice or summer solstice this year happened in the middle of a lunar month. This means the moon was around the time of turning into a full moon or getting away from a full moon. It was around the full moon. This is the middle of the lunar month. At the moment I'm doing this recording, The moon is on its third quarter. It's moving to a new moon. It's getting smaller and it will be new moon soon. We are on the 3rd of January right now when I'm recording this. Fake New Year's was 3 days ago. The next new moon will be on the 11th of January. This is in the northern hemisphere after winter solstice. The first new moon after winter solstice is the beginning of the real year, the real solar year. Because the winter solstice marks the high point of winter. After the high point of winter, where you have the shortest day and the longest night, the days will start to get longer because the next season is spring. And spring is obviously the first season of a solar year for humans. For humans, it is important that spring arrives. Humans won't starve to death. They can begin planting again. This is why in the northern hemisphere, where all these ideas come from, the end of year festival was created so that people then knew that the next season was going to arrive. It was a way of making people aware that winter would pass and everything would be okay, and soon there would be food again, plenty of food, and they would be able to plant and have animals and everything that they needed so that they don't starve to death. Therefore, the first new moon after winter solstice is the beginning of the year. This happens in the northern hemisphere in December, and it happens in the southern hemisphere in June. In the southern hemisphere in June, you have the winter solstice. So now I will give you the strange idea. It isn't really strange. It isn't really strange. But people might think it's strange because very few people take the time to observe and understand the real clock of this world, which is the sun and the seasons. And it's only a clock to us, people, human beings who depend on the sun and have awareness of it, that they depend on the sun. And so we like to count days and we like to understand what season we're in because human beings need to prepare. We are very fragile beings physically. We need to know a lot of stuff so we don't die. A lot of animals don't need that. Most animals don't need that. Or plants. Anyway, now I will tell you something that will try to make, I hope, a little bit more sense. Okay, in the northern hemisphere, the year obviously starts in what we are currently calling January. The first month in the northern hemisphere is the first month of the year. It doesn't start on the day that is marked on the calendar, but it is the first month. This year, on the 11th of January, the real natural world year will start in the northern hemisphere. All the while, in the southern hemisphere, none of that is happening. What's happening is, on the same day the new year starts in the northern hemisphere, the 7th month starts in the southern hemisphere. After the summer solstice, on the first new moon, the 8th month is starting here in the southern hemisphere where I live. In the northern hemisphere, people celebrated fake New Year on the 1st of January, when they should be celebrating it on the 11th, on the new moon, the first new moon after winter solstice. Now, down here in Brazil, in the southern hemisphere, we should not be doing any of this. We are in the middle of the year. Our new year falls in June after, let me see here. I have my calculations. I will just look it up. In the southern hemisphere where I live, winter solstice falls in June. And the first month of the year is the first new moon after winter solstice. So it generally will fall at the end of June or at the beginning of July. People in the southern hemisphere should be celebrating New Year's on the first new moon after winter solstice in June or July. None of these world celebrations make any sense because they all bow to the King of England. They all come from that 0 point time in Greenwich, London. It doesn't make any sense. Still talking about the moon, the lunar cycles. If you are on that page, please look at the duration of the lunar cycles. Every lunar cycle, every month, is more or less 29 days and some odd hours long. Now, this takes care of leap years. What happens if you observe and take notes and do the work? No one does this. No one does this. Or at least I haven't met anyone in my life that did this. But if you take notes and you observe, you will notice that on some years you will have 13 months between one winter solstice and the next winter solstice. This takes care of leap years. You don't need leap years. You don't need extra days. Nature does it for you. It just puts in one extra lunation every now and then, an extra lunar month for you, gifted by nature, which makes everything else make sense. Now, here is the problem for these people of the world government that want everyone on the same page all the time doing their bidding. The extra month is not the same for the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere. They will fall in different years, if you consider years this fake number they are giving you. So last year, in the northern hemisphere, there were 13 lunations, so 13 months. And this year, that it's starting now in the northern hemisphere, and it's called some number, in the southern hemisphere, we'll have 13 lunations. So you can't really have a one world calendar, can you? Especially if you start the year wherever you like, because church reasons or government reasons or history reasons, all fake reasons, by the way. Nature doesn't care about all those reasons. Why should you care? So this is a problem for these people with libido dominandi, right? How can they then put a dog whistle in there and say it's Christmas time when people figure out that no, it's not Christmas time for me. I'm in the middle of summer. I won't go buy presents and put up Christmas trees. It would send all these controls to hell if people woke up to the notion that nature is different, is doing different things in the northern hemisphere as it's doing in the southern hemisphere. Now, okay, if you're hearing this and you're still in that mind frame that this would never work out. If we just let people look at nature, then how would we make things happen? Okay, it's fair enough, fair enough. Now I will send you to greenwichmeantime.com. It's in the description. Just click on there and then scroll all the way down. There will be a little box there called Event Time and Countdown. And then you can click on it. Just click on it. You will arrive on a page that lets you create a shareable event across time zones. Think about that. You can go on the internet, create an event like Magic Puppy Day or Pink Unicorn Day, and you can pick a date on fake calendar and pick a time, and then you create that and you can share across the world with all your friends that I hope you have around the world, because really having people in other places of the world at this time of our existence as human beings is the only way you can get to sanity. Because you will see the insanity happening in their realms, and then you won't be so alone. You will understand how people are making you crazy in this realm if you have friends from many places around the world that can relay to you their experience with the things that are happening to them. And you will then have a much clearer picture of what goes on in this place. But back to this event creating and sharing, you can create an event and then send it to all your friends around the world. And the program that they put up there, this app, will calculate exactly what day and what time it will be for them in their time zone. So you can coordinate people around the world to be present on an event, and everyone will have the correct time and date for them. Now, going back to calendars, this could be accomplished on a much larger scale. We could finally, due to the internet and these wonderful people called coders that create these kinds of tools, we can finally give up the tyranny of fake calendars. We can have, or we could have, real nature-based day counting, month counting, which would be days through daylight, months through lunations, and years through seasons, locally for everyone. And we could coordinate these events that may or may not happen on a global scale. I hate this word. Let's say on a world scale that would entail all the countries and all the people. We could have these events even. If anyone wants those events, I don't see why that would be relevant, but okay. We could have an event called, I don't know, Happy Earth Day or whatever, and we could coordinate this on the whole world through an app like this. So something that would happen in the first month on the third day of the lunar cycle in the northern hemisphere could then happen in the 7th month on the 3rd day in the southern hemisphere. This is due to the fact that solstices and equinoxes are inversed but stable. And lunations are also very stable. Generally, a lunation will fall on the same day in the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere. There are exceptions because of time zones. Sometimes you have a lunation on 10 o'clock p.m. in the northern hemisphere, and on some place in the southern hemisphere, you have it on the next day, 12 minutes after midnight or something. This happens. This can happen. But also, it wouldn't be a problem because they are very similar, a few hours apart, if that. So they fall on different days, but it's really not a problem. It's very, very close to one another. The real clocks of this world, the sun, the moon, seasons, stars even, movement of the stars, all of this is very stable, and you can plan things as a human being using these natural tools of timekeeping. And now with technology, I can't understand how we are still using some medieval idiocy that was put up by people to control everyone else. Okay, now you might be thinking, okay, but how will I count the year? Because not even that is a consensus. The Western world counts Jesus, and so it's 2000 years or whatever. The Chinese have their own start of time. Jewish people and people who follow Islam, they have another date. Okay, so let's fix this. There is something called the Great Year in astronomy. And I will read the definition of the Great Year. The Great Year is the period of one complete cycle of the equinoxes around the ecliptic, or about 25,800 years. Now, it is important to tell you what the ecliptic is. From the perspective of an observer on Earth, the sun's movement around the celestial sphere over the course of a year traces out a path along the ecliptic against the background of stars. The ecliptic is an important reference plane and is the basis of the ecliptic coordinate system. Now, one more definition, and then I will try to explain everything. In astronomy, the ecliptic coordinate system is a celestial coordinate system commonly used for representing the apparent position, orbits, and pole orientations of solar system objects. So, what is the ecliptic? The ecliptic is a sphere, an imaginary sphere. It's a tool, it's a concept, it's a mental concept, it's a tool that was created by human beings to observe the stars and the movement of one planet or one star in relation to another, and also the movement of the sun across this celestial sphere. It really is just a map of stars laid out on a sphere and then have coordinates attributed to this spherical map so that movements of stars and comets and planets and the sun can be mapped out so that it can be made sense of. And you can then know when seasons start and end and their length, because even seasons don't have fixed lengths. We say 3 months, but it doesn't work like that. Astronomically speaking, seasons have different durations. They are calculated from equinox to solstice to equinox to solstice. So you come up with time frames that look like this. Winter in the solar year will have 88 days, 23 hours, and 39 minutes. Then spring in the next solar year will have 92 days, 17 hours, and 44 minutes. All of this makes perfect sense. It's just nature doing its thing. And then human beings watching what nature does, creating a good tool like this spherical dome, imaginary dome of stars, the ecliptical, and mapping the workings of nature that can be observed onto that map, that tool, that concept, good concept, solid concept that has been created by human beings so that they can then calculate everything they need. This is what everyone has to get back to find some grounding in this insane place. Otherwise, people will fall prey to others, other human beings exactly like them, but that have this idea that it is right to dominate others. Anyway, so this was me rambling on about calendars and real time and whatever. I hope at least some part of this was useful to the person that is listening. I know it's a long recording, and maybe I wasn't as clear as I wanted to be. If there is anything that I could have done better, if you stumbled on this channel and found this recording and you found it somewhat interesting, but if there is something I could do better, then please leave a comment and tell me what it is. And if it's a good idea, I will try to do better next time. I just want to say one more thing about the counting of years that I can see is a problem. We don't have sane people in charge of counting years. If we did, we would have the counting of years by that great year concept, the period of one complete cycle of the equinoxes around the ecliptic, or about 25,800 years. Since our counting of years right now is between 2000 and 5000 something, this would be very easy to accomplish. Just start from a place, a position of equinoxes on the ecliptic, map it out from there, and when then the equinoxes and solstices have made their whole pilgrimage around the ecliptic and returned to that same point after 25,800 years, then one great year, one era would have passed, and then we would have years counted in a sensible way. But we are not there yet. Sane people are not in charge of counting time. And so you and me and every individual, every human being will have to find a way to count their own time. And this is my suggestion. Count your years by your birthday. Or, if you prefer, count your years by something important that happened to you or to your family. Find one year that you would consider year zero for you, and then you count up from that and down from that, exactly as the church, the Christian church, does with Jesus. They just created year zero out of thin air by declaring that some Jesus person was born, and then they count up from this mythical creature's birth and down before this mythical creature was born. Very easy. So I suggest your own birthday, so that you start to get acquainted with relative time taking. If I am born 1 year and my brother is born 10 years before me, then I was born at year zero for me, okay? But he was born on minus 10 years for me. From his perspective, my brother's perspective, he would be born on year zero for him, and I would be born on year 10 for him. This will start to make sense for you. And you will then arrive at a much clearer idea of how real time taking works. Then expand to the season thing. Ask your friend on the other side of this realm what is happening in his life. While you are on the beach, the poor person will be freezing to death. And then it will inverse. And so you will start to get very, very grounded. You will understand that these fake things are not reliable and you don't have to abide by them. You won't feel so lost and you won't feel the urge to participate in collective nonsense. You will have your personal calendar that starts when you say it starts. Your era starts where you say it starts. And then nature will come and will tell you when the first month of the year is, and when the last month of the year is, and how long these months are, how many days they spawn. And also if you have a year of 12 lunations or 13 lunations, and you won't be so lost. And you can then observe nature, look out the window, and you will understand how beautifully organized everything is. Nowadays, even the seasons on the fake calendar are marked wrong. On the calendar, when it's winter solstice, it is marked as the beginning of winter. It isn't the beginning of winter. It is the high point of winter. It is the middle of winter. Winter starts 1.5 months before winter solstice. This is the real thing that is happening. And then after winter solstice, 1.5 months after winter solstice, spring starts. Then on the spring equinox, on the fake calendar, it says beginning of spring. It isn't beginning of spring. It is the middle of spring. It is the high point of spring. And you will observe that. You will look out the window and birds are making babies and the trees will have flowers on them and flowers will be everywhere. And this obviously is not the beginning of spring. It is the high point of spring, where everything is blooming and babies are being born like crazy in the natural world. But at the beginning of spring, you will notice 1.5 months before that the earth starts getting greener. There are more rainy days. Animals are humping and making their babies. Because when it's actually the middle of spring, the high point of spring, those babies will have to be born. And those flowers will have to bloom. On fake calendar, it's all wrong. Just throw that crap away. Use it to make appointments. business appointments. It's all that it's good for, with people that are crazy and think it's real. I dream of the day in which we will use technology to our favor to abide by nature. We are a very long way from that, which saddens me, but I'm doing my part here in this recording, that it's too long already. But I think it is at least a bit useful to people who want to live a real based life and not a fake life. And I will leave you with the wisdom of the Tao, from Taoism. I don't believe in any religion if there is where you're going. I'm not a Taoist. I don't subscribe to any form of authority over me besides my own dumb brain, which tries to understand things by itself and then talk to other lovely people that are doing the same, so that I'm not swallowed up by some random collective nonsense that makes me crazy. I had enough of that. Okay, so the Taoists or Taoism has a wonderful quote that I think is sane and rational and can be used by every human being, irrespective of their religious or political or whatever else persuasion. And the quote is, "When in doubt, observe nature." Thank you for listening. See you next time.